Okay. Okay, you started. But I will also send you these slides after the webinar. So you can see how many gases, how many dusts are risky. And this is also for you. I want to promote it under another point of view. I always say that our customers don't care about the risk, but they care about the money. This is a business, okay? Because if you have the weapons to convince your client that he has to consider ATEX, you are going to make more business, even more with motive, because in one product, all in one, we will see, we are going to have all the groups of dust, all the groups of gases, and a very high risk safety. Normally, you have to choose in a product range among several aspects that we'll see. In our case, we'll see that in one product, we have 90% of the possible applications and risks. Actually, these are also examples of places where there is an ATEX risk that often is misunderestimated. Okay, people can say, I don't care, nothing happened before, nothing will happen in future. They do like that. No one ever controlled and so on, but shit happens always in all these places. And when it happens, it's too late. So it's better to consider it, okay? And if it happens that you didn't do what you had to do, you are also responsible for it. Actually, we have three kinds of products, as we said at the beginning: variable speed drives, gearboxes, and motors. These three ranges have been certified, some a couple of years ago, some 1 year ago, and they have been recently recertified by TÜV because we had to make some update. Why did we change the certification laboratory? We changed it because Alba Rubens decided not to go on with this work and passed forwarded to TÜV Germany its duties. An ATEX certification does not expire, by the way. It does not have an expiry date. It expires only if you change the product, if you make some modifications, some improvements. And that is also why we had to recertify our product. We did it also because we wanted to fulfill with some new requirements, like for instance, in the Middle East, they wanted these motors to be suitable for an ambient of 50 degrees. Or we wanted our gearboxes to be suitable for all groups of dusts and gases before they were only suitable for 2 on 3. But now let's go to this nomenclature. Let's try to understand what is written on the nameplates, okay? You may read the nameplates with strange nomenclatures that even us cannot understand because they belong to the past or they belong to American ways of certification. America is always different because it has never, whoever it is, I hope to, I'm going to ask him to, my God, deactivate. Did I get it? Yes, I got the right one. Okay. These nomenclatures is got what we are going to understand. If you understand this, you understand how to order. You also understand what is the right thing to be installed in a place and what to say to your clients. And we are going to use the main example, the motors. Now you can see that at the beginning of what you find in the nameplate or in the certification, you find this II. There may be only one I or two I. The difference is that II is for surface industry. I is for underground, so typically the mines. But if it is a mine in surface, it's II, okay? The two things, I and II, take two different kinds of classifications of the risk. Different categories, okay? Now we are only in II, which is 90% of the market, and we are going to talk only about the categories of II, which are category 1, 2, and 3. By examples, I will show you what does it mean. And in fact, here we write another number, 2, which means category 2. Okay, there are 3 categories. 3 is the low risk, 2 is high risk, 1 is very high risk. And I'm going to tell you by example what does it mean. Then there are 2 letters, G and D. G is for gas, and D is for dust. Come on, PowerPoint, go on. Okay. Some people like to talk about zones, okay? They don't tell you category and dust or gas. They tell you zone. But zone is not written in the nameplate, it's not written in the certification. There is a client, Jordi knows this very well, he's listening us, who wants the zones to be written in the nameplate. But we can write in the nameplate only what they have been, only the nameplate data that the certification body asked us to put. Okay, also the nameplate has been certified and we cannot play with it. So for this client of Jordi, we had to add a further nameplate. But by the way, this further nameplate is useless because if we say 2 gas, we are talking about zone 1 and 2. If we say 2 dust, we're talking about zone 21 and zone 22. Why 1 and 2? Because category 1 is the highest risk. Category 2 is high risk too, but a little bit lower. And category 3 is low risk. Now, zone 2 is category 3 or is category 3 gas. Zone 1 is category 2 gas. Zone 0, we don't have it, is category 1 gas. Okay, we don't have category 1. At MOTI, we don't have category 1. But we'll see that this is useless because no one would put a motor in a category 1 place. 21 means category 2 dust. 22 zone means category 3 dust. Okay? If we have in the same nameplate 2G and 2D, it means that we cover gas, dust. Category 1, not. Category 2, yes. Category 3, yes. Zone 1, zone 2, zone 21, zone 22. Okay? There are also further ways of saying the same thing, because at the end of a nameplate, you also find this writing GB, DB, G is for gas, D is for dust, B is category 2. So you can understand that C is category 3 and A is category 1. I'm not going to bore you further or confuse you further, but this table chart is resuming what I just told you. Okay, so if you want to go back, you will read it in the slides that I'm going to give you after the webinar. These are also examples of what is category 1 or 2 or 3, but the best example are given by these pictures. Now, you can see zone 0 is category 1, zone 1 is category 2, zone 2 is category 3. Zone 2 is where they tell you, please don't smoke around your car, okay? Maybe you did it, and luckily nothing exploded. The fact is that the risk is there, but it's not high. Category 2 is where the gas passes through the pump, but it doesn't remain there forever. Zone 0 or category 1 is where the fuel remains. Would you put a motor inside the fuel? Not. Okay, that is why I told you that we are covering everything, because we couldn't make a motor for category 1, for zone 0. Nothing would put a motor inside the fuel. No one. So the tank is zone 0, the pump is zone 1 or category 2. And in fact, if you look at the pump in the oil station, you will see that it's category 2 gas. Okay, this is a photo I did myself. Dust, it's the same matter. Inside the silos, inside the tank, where the dust remains is zone 20 or category 1. Where the dust passes through is zone 21, which is category 2. All around where the worker is working is category 3, like the zone 22. You can understand by this how different it is category 3 from category 2. In fact, with category 3, the certification is not mandatory. One can declare, a manufacturer of a motor or a gearbox can declare that its gearbox is suitable for category 3 under its own responsibility. And that is because the risk is low. And the features of the product are very different too. Now let's jump the letters EB, TB, etc. We'll come back to them later because this is leading to some confusion, but I anticipate you. EB, TB, they are not classifying any risk. They are just to describe the product, the solution taken by the manufacturer to handle that product. That's all. Handle that risk, that gas, that dust. Okay, now we see II or III. That is always written, never changes. Okay, they could also avoid it. I don't know why they wrote it down, but what matters is C. There are 3 groups of gases and 3 groups of dust. A, B, C. The C1 is covering also B and A because the C1 is the most risky. If you are able to manage the highest risk, you are considered in compliance also with the lowest one. So we never ask you as motive, what group of gas is it for? What group of dust is it for? Because we are covering them all. So this is not a question that you need to make to the client. Classify his gas or its dust according to its physical properties. Let's make an example, okay? There is also another thing which is written, T4. It's the temperature, okay? It's the ignition temperature of the gas or the dust. At what temperature does this gas got inflamed, explode, or create a fire? If it is T4, it means 135 degrees. Actually, I tried to look for a gas which has an ignition point which is so low, 135 degrees. I didn't find it. Somewhere there should be, because as I told you, physicians are not sadistic. If they did it, they have to find such kind of gas. Of course, if our product is that cold, 135 degrees, it means that it complies also with the gases T3, T2, T1, which have an ignition point which is 200, 300, 450. Okay, we are colder. We don't reach that temperature, therefore we comply with them. Here we are already facing one kind of typical confusion of the client. Sometimes they read a nameplate and they say, I want it T3, and we offer T4. And they answer, no, I want T3, it's written T3, I want T3. It's T4. Yes, but I said T3, it's T4. Okay, because they don't know what you're talking about. It's like they say, I want IP54 because it's written IP54. Okay, I give you IP55. I said IP54. Okay, this is a matter of ignorance. Hydrogen is a C group, which means the highest risk. These are physical properties, okay? We are C, and therefore we comply with C, we comply with B, we comply with A. D does not exist, okay? Our product could not be used only with those gases that are T5 or T6, okay? So we are there. Then the dusts, also the dusts are classified, as I told you, A, B, C. D does not exist. The most risky dusts are the conductive dusts. Actually, they may make some tests to classify the dust. They put a certain temperature to find out the ignition point of a temperature, and they see whether this dust makes only smoke or fastly got all inflamed, or what happens. Okay, these are physical properties. But what? is important for you to know is that if that gas is B, you cannot use an A product. If that gas is C, you can only use a C product, okay? We are C, and therefore we comply with them all. Every dust also has an ignition temperature, actually two ignition temperatures. One is in the atmosphere when it's cloud, and one in the surface of a product when a layer of dust is formed. As you can see on the surface of a product, the dust gets in flames before, and that is what has to be considered. In fact, when we say T 135 degrees, we are talking about inside and outside of a motor. And now we go to the main confusion of all the clients. Actually, you got the idea that an explosion, not all of you, but many of you, sorry, have got the idea that an explosion-proof motor, or we should always say ATEX or EX motor, is something heavy, ugly, and expensive, like this one. we also did it before. We call it our old way. And when a client sees a product which is light, almost looking like a normal one, can you give me that ATEX product there, Matthias? Yes. Even Matthias made some confusion. He asked me, "Is it this?" Because it's looking like a normal one. Okay, you can see it. Okay. This versus this. Okay, if I didn't know anything, I would say the blue one is better. Come on, it's more expensive, heavier. You can see how solid it is. But in reality, Magix is considered by the certification bodies, the physicians, and the norms as safe as the other one. Why? The secret is in these letters. There are several ways to prevent the explosion risk. Okay, one, the easiest one, under a design point of view, is to make it heavy like the blue one. That is the EXD. It's only for gas in reality, that kind of feature. They make it heavy because if the gas comes into and there is an explosion inside, the explosion does not go outside. So the enclosure has to be very heavy, mechanically strong, with certain geometries, typically in cast iron, but it's not mandatory for it to be in cast iron. There are also some EXD motors which are made in aluminum. Of course, anyway, the enclosure is bigger than a normal one. That's the EXD, which is for gas. But another way to prevent the risk is to avoid any source of heating or of sparkles, okay? And that is the so-called increased safety. And now let's go to the techniques are containment, segregation, or prevention. The way of the light one is prevention. It's not that easy to make it. So one may say, okay, Bosio, you are saying that yours has the same safety of the other one. Then if it is cheaper but has the same safety, why don't all the manufacturers do it in the same way? Because it's not easy. And you must have a control on anything, on the chemical composition of the raw material. It's also a matter of organization. You must have a traceability from a serial number of the chemical composition of all the critical parts, the mechanical properties of all the plastics parts. And inside you have to control more things, impregnation, outside, other things, and so on. It's not that easy. If it was easy, anyone would do it. We started with the easy way, the blue one. But if we wanted to be more competitive, we had to develop our technology and our organization too. And so we finally got the result of EXE, whose safety is certified by external laboratory. The nice thing is that it's not us telling that. But why am I remaining in this argument so long? Because one of the most frequent discussions with the client is, well, it's cheaper, it's lighter, it cannot be. Okay, and in fact, here you can see what do the norms say. We are in increased safety, and it is for category 2 risk. EXD is also for category 2. There is not a place, not a gas where an EXD can be installed, but an EXE could not. Okay? It does not exist by the norm for the physicians. EXD is based on an enclosure with must resist to internal exposure pressure with certain features. And that was our old way. And the new way is EXE. We must avoid any spark or any heating from inside and outside, of course, too. Sometimes you can see also EXDE. What does it mean? Is that in that product they combined some parts which are containing the explosion with some parts which are preventing the explosion. Matthias, you can always speak.
Yeah, let me just give you one further input on what Giorgio was just telling about the two ways of achieving the same objective. From a commercial standpoint, what has been always said is, okay, a motor like this in EXD, heavy, ugly, whatever, must be expensive. And it is, actually, it is expensive. It is normally 2 up to 7 times more expensive than a standard motor. Motive has decided to go just another way and say, okay, let's talk about the EXE, which is much more efficient, both from the aesthetic standpoint, but also, and mainly also from an economic standpoint. In fact, if you check on what we are offering to our customers and market and the market is, we are offering a price increase which is 40% higher in cost than a standard motor. So if you compare the 2 times, 7 times the price of a standard motor and 40% on an extra motor compared to standard, you will see why Motive is so successful on the ATEX market at the moment. Okay, so keep this in mind when it comes to discussion with your customers. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, some of you who know better Motive just got a bad news. He said 40%. For those who do not know Motive, 40% compared to the double or 7 times the price was a very good news. But for some others, it was a bad news because once it was only 30% higher than the standard motor. You know, it's also your fault. The fault of some clients who said, how is it possible that it's so cheap? So, okay. Anyway. Okay, there are also some other techniques for dust. And the one that we have adopted is dust proof. Of course, we have to take care also about the surface of a product. Dust proof means the dust cannot go in, but anyway, we have to take care about anti-static charges. So the plastics material cannot be there, or if they are there, they should be treated with conductive materials. Some components must be previously, like cable glands, previously ATEX certified. The painting layer should be made in a certain way, still the chemical composition, because we also have to take care about the surface. And these are. If you want to know more about how, what are the main differences between our standard product and our ATEX product, you can go to the into the website of Motive, with the manuals section, and download the ATEX addendums. They're called addendums because they are like additions, completion of the main manual of a standard product. In these completions, addendums, you can find some pictures describing the main differences, but they are not all. There are many further differences. And there you can have an idea. Actually, we told you at the beginning that we had certifications for the motors, for the gearboxes, and for the drives. I hope that now you understand what do II, 2, G, 2, D, Group C, temperature mean. And I hope that you understood also that the two letters after the EXE, they are not risk assessments. They are just ways to describe the techniques which has been adopted by the manufacturer. Now, actually, when you put together, when you mix a product having a certain classification, risk assessment, with another, the whole safety is determined by the one offering the lowest. So if, for instance, like in past, we had a certification for the gearboxes, which was for the B group, then by mixing motors and gearboxes, we could not reach the C group of a motor anymore. Okay? So this is new. If we put a variable speed drive of Motive onto a Motive ATEX motor, we do not fulfill anymore the gas requirements. Therefore, zone 1 and zone 2. Now there is also a further point that we are trying to... Yeah?
May I just give to the previous slide of Giorgio, which is, I think, one of the most important, interesting charts that we can show you. Let me just say and indicate that when you start using our configurator, okay, some of you are already using it. So we have a lot of downloads, up to 150 downloads of datasheets from our configurator every day. So it's a very powerful tool. But when you start using the configurator will guide you through exactly this situation. It will automatically select the ATEX option that is feasible or non-feasible. Okay, so if you are in doubt on a specific gear motor inverter application, which is to be ATEX, I strongly recommend to use our configurator. Giorgio is now showing you how it works. So what we take is we take a gearbox. We are selecting any kind of gearbox. In this case, it's a helical gearbox. We make a selection of the motor that is combined to the gearbox, and step by step, the system is guiding you through the right selection and is also offering the option of ATEX. As you can see in this case, there's one option for the ATEX category 2 in 40 degrees ambient temperature. For instance, if we now change this option into an IE3 motor option, as Giorgio is doing right now, excellent, what you will discover all of a sudden by submitting and refreshing this data is that the ATEX option all of a sudden can also achieve the 50 degrees ambient temperature. Giorgio is now showing you. So what I'm trying to transmit to you...
Only if there is only the motor,
yeah,
not the gearbox,
not
because the gearbox, no.
Exactly, only for using the motor in this case. But what I'm trying to transmit to you is if you are in doubt on a specific selection of a combination of ATEX gear motor inverter, use the configurator as much as you can. You see, in this case, all of a sudden we have an additional line that is showing you the option of the 50 degrees ambient temperature. So play with it as much as you can. If you are in doubt, in any case, you can drop us an email and we can support. Thank you.
Yeah, correct. Actually, yes, you can also mix here variable speed drives with gearboxes, and you can find accessories like encoders. And according to the selections that you do, it changes the offered options of a service vector. Also, the brake motors is another example. Let's put a variable speed drive. Okay, and with these motors, it. Yeah, this is a further example of, so what happens that it took off the gas. Okay, if I put a brake motor, it will give me several options also choice, but in this case, since I put a variable speed drive, it took away the gas. Maybe most of you know how our configurator works. Here you can download data sheets, three-dimensional data sheets, bidimensional data sheets, CAD drawings, in step model, etc. And this is like an online consultant. You don't need any login. So those who didn't yet use it, we just say play and learn. Okay, like we say to children normally. And let's go back to our slides. We said that the configurator is following our development, and therefore behind this configurator there are also these data. For instance, since last week we got the new certification where gearbox is adding the C group. We updated that, and you saw that now it's also offering C group in the gear motors. And in the future, you will find some further updating the configurator in our catalogs, of course, and those who receive our newsletters will receive an email informing about it. We are making power coolings because our motors are certified ATEX also for converter use. And in fact, you find it written now in the nameplate. Let's see if I can show it. Here it's written for converter use operation, because they're also suitable for converter use. But then it comes a problem. If I decrease the speed, I need a power cooling. But if I want it to be an ATEX ambient, this power cooling shall be ATEX 2. And we only have power coolings for category 3 now, but we are working for the development of new power coolings. We are also working on a new nano and a new neo, our variable speed drives for ATEX gas. Actually, you can imagine how this can help your sales too, because if one wants an inverter, a variable speed drive in an ATEX atmosphere, normally it is going to buy an ATEX cabin with ATEX cable, and it's a huge expense. While if you can have an ATEX motor inverter, then you have solved everything. Now this ATEX motor inverter is there only for dust, but we expect that before the end of the year, we may have a new versions of Neo and Nano, and then we will certify also for gas. In the offshore and in the shipping industry, there is also a combination which may help the business of our Greek followers today. Now, you know that we have two kinds of certifications for the marine motors. One is free, which is called the type approval, what you see here. It's covering all our motors, our three-phase motors. So if you can combine these marine motors approval, RINA is a member of IACS, which is an international accreditation of all the world global marine certification bodies. Okay, so its norms, its rules are the same of Lloyd's or Detnosche Veritas or certification bodies in Asia and in America. Now you combine this with the ATEX and you find an exclusive product to be offered to your clients. New is we have ATEX encoders. We have an ATEX brake, which is this is an EXD. With the brake, since there are some friction points, we had to consider that we couldn't prevent the sparkles or the heating, but we could prevent the explosion to go out. So these brakes are also 2 gas and 2 dust, which means zone 1, 2, 21, 22, like the motors. But they are very expensive. So if you are only in category 3, we have a further version of our brake motors looking like any kind of brake motors, but with a specific features, of course, with a normal brake, which is attached onto the motor shaft. And that is for category 3. In that case, once again, not once again anymore, in that case, the ATEX version is only 30% more expensive than the standard version, okay? But if you need category 2, then you need this special brake to be combined to the motor. These are the power coolings that we are developing for, once again, category 2, gas and dust. Why do we insist on category 2, gas and dust? Because we don't want you to come to us and say, I need category 3 or category 2. I need dust or I need gas. I need group A or B or C. And that is also an advantage for the distributors. We have some distributors, Zakaria is following us, for instance, in Morocco, which made a stock of ATEX motors of motive. You can't put in your inventory ATEX motors normally because there is one for A, one for B, one for C. The C is too expensive, the XD is too expensive, one is for gas, another is for dust, and therefore you never know what your client is going to buy. But with us, with these motors, you comply gas, dust, all the categories where a motor can be installed, all the groups. Where you have one motor, the only place where you cannot install it is underground in mining. Not a problem normally, no? So there are clients who decided, like for standard motors, to put in their inventory for a fast local service our ATEX motors. They permit to make more money than the standard motors where we know that the price is like the one of a commodity. We recently got also an upgrade of the certification of the motors for it to be suitable for 50 degrees. It was requested in the Middle East, 50 degrees ambient temperature. Yeah, Matthias.
I have a question for Giorgio, sorry. Some customers are asking us about temperature 55 degrees. Would this be okay if we can offer, even if it's stated 50 degrees, because there is a tolerance on that?
No, there is no tolerance.
No tolerance.
There is no tolerance. Even if we know that it could work at 50 degrees, we have only one certification for the whole range. So we have to consider the worst of the motors that we have in our range. Some heat more, some heat less. If there is one which is the worst of all, this is affecting the certification of all. And anyway, once it is certified for 50 degrees, the whole range, we can only write 50 degrees in the nameplate. If we were not talking about ATEX, that was a different matter. But here we're talking about ATEX and the certification bodies, the rules don't permit us to go beyond what they certify.
Okay.
And certain countries have their own certifications. So recently, but they, once again, based on the same international global norms, which started from IEC, like Ukraine. So we had to certify our motors also in Ukraine. So finally, they are certified 3 times by Alba Rubens, by TÜV, by the Ukrainian certification body. The motors and the gearboxes were recently certified in Ukraine. And now we are also making a further certification for the Eurasian countries. Okay, still, once again, they work with the same norms. The next week, we are going to make a virtual visit of a company, because one of the things that is to be certified, this is also next, with what I told you before. One of the things that is to be certified is not just the product, but also the company. To be frank, we started selling ATEX products when the products were certified, but the company was not yet certified according to the quality systems for EX product manufacture. Okay? And we did it because we were already complying with this norm, but yet it was not a company which was certified. Now it is. With Eurasian certification, they want the both to be certified together. And this certification goes much beyond the ISO 9001. An example that I did before is that by a serial number, we need to be able to trace the chemical composition of all the enclosure components, the body, the flanges, and also parts like the terminal board and so on. We have to keep this traceability. And that also explains why normally ATEX products are more expensive. But I give you an explanation why ours is not that expensive. Our company was already digitalized. Our processes are made by a lot of, are followed by a lot of barcode readings and so on. And therefore, for us, all of this information can be found in our system. We don't need to write it on the paper. Since we don't need to write it on the paper, we don't need to spend time and labor costs on it. And that is what we got recently, this kind of certification. But in reality, when we produce a standard product or an ATEX product in Motive, we do it in the same way. Also, the final tests of our products, standard motors, for example, are the same final test, but also the gearboxes. The same final test that we apply on the ATEX. ATEX and special ATEX and normal standard products for us does not mean any difference in our production and in our final tests. In fact, you can also see it if you enter into our system, so our website, the serial number of the product, you can download the list of the tests that we did, no matter if that serial number was a standard product or it was an ATEX one. So once again, if you need further help, there is also the configurator helping you. Play with it. Okay, Matthias told me, please cancel it. I did not. This is a scientist.
Okay, guys, don't take this personally.
No, it's not for you. It's for the explosion. But it's an explosion. Okay.
Yeah, he's indicating the explosion. Okay, just don't misunderstand that.
No, now there is also a matter which is Max. Okay, there are no questions. Ah, no, there is one question by Jordi. Hi, Giorgio. Why users and buyers, sorry, okay, why users and buyers are still asking for an EXE or EXD and not for the user classification of ATEX you explain, which is the reason to buy this classification instead of ATEX standards? There is no reason except ignorance. As I told you, EXE or EXD manage the same risk, just in different ways. So if you want to order a motor, you don't have to say, I want an EXD. Also because let's say that you really want an EXD. Let's say that you want really an EXD, but it's still incomplete. What temperature? What group? And hopefully it's for category 2. That's it. Don't just read a nameplate and say to another manufacturer, do it like that. Also because we don't like when one comes to us with an order and says, I want it according to the model code of the competitor. If you buy a BMW, do you go to the seller and say, I want it like the Skoda? They say, please choose my model. Okay.
Let me just add this, Jordi. We had a a recent example of a potential customer who was basically indicating, I want exactly this wording, and we will try to explain to him by using our presentation that the old serial number that he was sending us was basically no longer actual. And from his standpoint, he was just making the point, my customer is asking me exactly for this. So it is clearly a situation where somehow we need to teach them what has changed in the world over the last 15 years about also the classification and the wording that is written on the nameplate. So our duty is basically maybe just not to indicate which ATEX should be selected, as we already said. This is the responsibility of the customer. But very often customers are not knowing what they are asking for. So we are trying to make the right explanation, giving the right answers to the wrong questions, basically.
Deactivate, okay. Do you have available stock in Indonesia? Yes, there is. You have to contact Mesak, our area manager in Indonesia. Okay, so Mesak Motive.it, you can interact with him. Did Motive have experience ATEX in mining? Mining, no experience. This is underground. But if it is surface, well, actually, we are not the installers. To be frank, we don't know where our ATEX products go to at the end, because that depends by our client. We don't control, we are not in touch with the fund users. In Italy or Southeast Asia, yeah, anyway, we are exported to several countries. We have some local area managers in many Southeastern Asian countries. Like, for instance, we have in the Philippines, in Indonesia, in Vietnam, in Malaysia, in Thailand. So just contact us and we will put you through with the right one. Okay, Matthias say with Jay that he will also interact with you, Jay. Other further questions? Let's see, what's the time here? Oh my God, so punctual, huh? 1 hour, 60 minutes. Now, anyway, we are going to send you this webinar recording and also the slides. Jordi has another question. Okay, some of our customers are interested in NEO and Nano for gas. Will it be available by the end of this year? Hopefully. Do you have certification for 55 degrees and 60 degrees? ATEX not. We have some products for 100 degrees of ambient temperature, which is called Delfire, but not in ATEX. Okay, yes, Mesak has intervened for J. Good. Well, anyway, we are at your disposal. The configurator is at your disposal too. We are going to send you the recording, and any further question, don't hesitate. Okay. Okay, there is a further question. Peniel, does an EG3 from Motive same as good as D2G4 for Motive? I didn't understand you. Most of the clients here have accreditation requires D2G4. I don't know what country is your Peniel, and I don't know what D2G4 means. Syed, contact me by email and I will give you this specific answer. My email address is this one. Okay, Matthias already sent the email address. Okay. In case of further question, okay, thanks you, Matthias. EXProof D2. I don't know what is D2 is. Here you mean dust category 2. Our products are dust category 2, if this is the answer. So yes, we are category 2 dust and gas. But by the way, if I didn't understand your question and it is specific for your country, please write to my email address. Okay, Philippines. Okay, Peña. IEC EX certification? No, sorry. We have the ATEX one, which is applicable in many countries worldwide, but we know that in some countries the European certification is not accepted and an IEC EX would be needed, but we don't have it. Maybe one day. Good. Good. Thank you very much to anyone.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks very much. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Matthias.
Bye.
Joe?
Bye.